Recorded Books and R.B. Digital present Joseph McCarthy, Reexamining the Life and Legacy of America's Most Hated Senator, by Arthur Herman, narrated by Pratt. Introduction. When I walked into the mall in downtown Appleton, Wisconsin on a late and lazy Sunday morning, I had no address for the place I was going. I didn't even know the name of the cemetery. The idea for doing this had come to me while my wife and I were flying to Wisconsin to visit my parents. Sitting in Chicago O'Hare Airport during those heavy, boring moments before boarding our plane, I had suddenly decided that while I was out there, I should visit Joe McCarthy's grave. Since I was writing a book on him, it seemed only fitting to pay a visit. It was also the 40th anniversary of his death, a lifetime ago in my case. I was barely 5 months old when McCarthy had been buried on May 7, 1957, in his hometown of Appleton. In one sense, he has never been laid to rest. Joe McCarthy was and remains the single most despised man in American political memory, far more reviled than Aaron Burr or Richard Nixon or even George Wallace. Yet I knew that some people treat his grave as a kind of shrine. The John Birch Society, the final word in right-wing extremism and anti-communist paranoia, made its home in Appleton, keeping vigil, as it were, beside the fallen hero's tomb, although their offices are actually in a strip mall on the other side of town. One biographer, David Oshinsky, had published a picture of McCarthy's grave strewn with flowers from well-wishers. Thanks to the Oshinsky photo, I had an idea what the headstone looked like. My problem, since I hadn't brought any of my notes with me, was to find out exactly where it was. McCarthy's grave. A shrine to die-hard supporters. A milestone of justice to his enemies. Joe McCarthy's death, Daniel Burston had growled to me when we had had lunch at the Cosmos Club a few weeks earlier. Isn't that the fifth proof for the existence of God? The term enemies seems harsh for describing Joe McCarthy's detractors and critics more than 40 years after his death. But the bald truth is that the term does capture the spirit of their attacks, both then and now. Senator McCarthy died yesterday in Washington, wrote the English newspaper News Chronicle in May 1957. America was the cleaner by his fall, and as cleaner by his death. When Richard Rovere would publish his dark masterpiece, Senator Joe McCarthy, 2 years later, he asserted that, like Hitler, McCarthy was a screamer, a political thug, a master of the mob, and that he usurped executive and judicial authority whenever the fancy struck him. As for McCarthy's supporters, the bat-haunted minute women of the USA, to the Texas millionaires, to the China lobby, to the hard anti-communist intelligentsia of New York, they came to McCarthy from the outmost fringes, where grievances and anxieties were the strongest and the least grounded in reason, where the passion for authoritarian leadership was greatest, where the will to hate and condemn and punish could most easily be transformed into political action. Rovere was a journalist and the quintessential liberal anti-communist of that era. He despised the vicious and narrow-minded totalitarian spirit communism represented, but he and the other liberals thought they saw the same spirit among their fellow Americans on the political right. McCarthyism was part of a popular revolt against the upper classes, as Harvard sociologist Talcott Parsons put it, and Rovere, for one, had no doubt about which side he himself was on. He had written a series of devastating pieces on McCarthy for The New Yorker, and had crossed swords with him more than once. Yet, he did not for a moment believe that his own personal involvement in those events disqualified him from passing historical judgment on the era or the man. Joe McCarthy, Rovere concluded, had never actually believed in the monstrous crusade he had set in motion. Anti-communism, patriotism, the Catholic Church were all tools for self-promotion, never sacred causes. To McCarthy, everything was profane. He had some decent instincts. Who doesn't? Rovere had to add, but in the mirror, McCarthy must have seen and recognized a fraud. Have more recent commentators changed their perspective? Try William O'Neill in American High, The Years of Confidence, 1945.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?